interrogation torture team talking about, do we kill them at 20 or at 32? And you can't just tweak it. You have to admit it's a 52-year mistake and do the opposite. At least build a campground, which is 10 times cheaper.
Thanks, Evan. I'll maybe address the campground question and build some as well. First of all, homelessness obviously is an issue that's been, as Evan has said, has been with us since the city has existed, and every city of any size in America is struggling with this. If there was a magic solution that we could say, oh, geez, all we have to do is this, this, and this, we solve homelessness, believe me, we would do it regardless of the cost. When I have an opportunity to meet with my colleagues from around the country at National League of Cities, we spend a lot of time putting our heads together saying, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? How have you addressed this? And we're trying to find best practices here. I would love to be able to say that we could end homelessness someday. That would be unrealistic optimism. We will probably not end homelessness. But what we can do is the best we can to try to address homelessness. And people who find themselves homeless for reasons that are unique to each individual person. One of the things that Evan mentioned was our camping ban. Boulder has had for many years a camping ban, a ban against camping on public property. You can obviously camp on your own property. You can allow people to camp on your own property. This is on public property, our parks and our open space. And one of the reasons we do that is because we provide a bed, a place to sleep. Bed's probably too strong a word. A place to sleep for everyone who needs it. And I'll give you some statistics. Currently, we provide, during the wintertime, 310 places to sleep. Some of that is our North Boulder homeless shelter. Some of that is the faith-based community. Thank you very much, St. Andrews, for providing that. We're actually building a new shelter on 30th Street. Currently, we provide 310 beds. I just have the stats for the month of January off the top of my head. Our peak utilization in the month of January, that is the coldest night in January, the night we had the most number of people presenting themselves for housing in January, was on January 15th. And that was 247. So 310 beds, 247 users. So we had 63 beds that were not used, 63 sleeping places that were not used. All the other days in January were less than 247. And I firmly believe that we should always have a place to sleep for anyone who needs it, and we're doing that. And because we're doing that, I think it's appropriate for us to not have people sleeping outside. First of all, I think it's inhumane to make people sleep outside. That's my personal opinion, to make people sleep outside. We should provide places for people to sleep. And so this is a community value. There are certain things that we as a community agree that people should not do in public. I'm not going to list some of them, but I think you can all use your imaginations about things that people shouldn't do in public. And we as a community have decided, and hundreds of communities across the country have come to the same conclusion, that sleeping outside is not good for the community. That's our community value. Now, some cities allow it, and that's certainly their community value, and that's certainly their prerogative. This community, and a majority of people who reach out to council will say, we really rather not have people sleeping outside. What we'd rather have you do is spend the money to provide sleeping places for people inside. And I happen to agree with that community value position. So,
Bob and I share the same views on this, so I'll just echo what you said. And you know, a particular passion of mine and something that I am aggressively working on in all capacities is affordable housing. And that, to me, is this is a root of why we have homelessness to begin with. Mental health is as well, and I feel strongly that the city needs to increase its services for mental health, and our human services director feels the same way and wants to, and that's a budgeting matter, but she is actively, creatively thinking about ways to enhance our budget for mental health and to add new services, and I really appreciate her leadership there. I hope that fairly soon we'll be able to share some of what she's doing to increase that budget. And so just not to repeat what Bob said, I know the things that I'm talking about may seem a little off topic from what you asked, Evan, but I think Bob did a great job of addressing those. And then I'll just say that I really hope that we can address these root issues of homelessness in our own city.
I have a friend that has a niece in California, and she went out one Thanksgiving, and a fellow who had helped her do some stuff in the house was there at Thanksgiving with his wife. And he had said he used to be homeless, and I've heard the statistics of people don't want to get off the street. Another friend of mine years ago offered a fellow a place to stay, and when he wasn't job hunting, I mean, they just want a free handout and they don't want to better themselves. And I belong to Harsham, and we have Path to Home. And I know that there's a lot of people that come there that are never going to get a job and be sustainable. So what is the answer? Because we can't just give a free handout. We have, it'd be nice if some of these people could get themselves into the, working class, et cetera. But I don't know if this is really practical.
Thank you for raising that. And the answer is it is practical for some people and it's not practical for others, right?
But for this guy to say
right.
that I wanted to be homeless.
Right.
And I don't know, I participated a couple years ago in the survey of how long you've been homeless, et cetera, that they do in January.
Yeah, so thank you, and thank you for Harsham participating in our faith-based support. The reasons for people being homeless are unique to each individual person has a different reason for being homeless. And a one-size-fits-all solution just doesn't make sense, right? Because for some people, they are very capable of mainstreaming back into society. Maybe they had a financial setback. Maybe they were kicked out by an abusive spouse. Maybe they lost their job. And those people who otherwise have abilities to be part of our community oftentimes just need a temporary solution. And so what we're doing better, and this is a relatively recent change, and this is, again, we're addressing homelessness is an iterative set of solutions. One of the things we put in place last year, and it's actually having tremendous successful results, is something we call coordinated entry. In other words, rather than saying each homeless person is the same, that we're going to provide this person the same as this person, the same as this person, is upon presentation, as soon as they show up and ask for some sort of service, we try to figure out where did this person come from, how long have they been in Boulder, where are they heading to if they're just passing through, what are their needs as far as addiction assistance or mental health. Is this a temporary situation? Is it a longer-term situation? How long have they been homeless? Have they been in and out of our system? And based upon that information, we can kind of put them into it. Maybe they're just passing through. Maybe they just need a place to sleep for a night or two and then a bus ticket to their next destination, which we can provide them. Maybe they have a severe mental health problem and they're not able to right themselves and that they need treatment. But as you say, a lot of our homeless people, people that find themselves homeless, are people who simply need some job training, some stabilization, some assistance. I'm a big fan of Bridge House, and as many of you know, Bridge House is one of our homeless service providers. And one of the programs that they run is the Ready to Work program. And my only fault of it is I wish it was bigger, because it's great, and I wish we could do more. Currently, they house and train about 44 to 45 people at a time, men and women. They have to have some background here in Boulder. And they have two enterprises right now, but they're going to expand into other enterprises. One is landscaping and one is culinary arts. And the programs typically last about 9 months, and people are provided housing. They're given training in either landscaping or culinary arts, depending on where their skills or interests might lie. And and they make money. They actually earn money providing these services, which Bridge House then contracts out to businesses and the city and other places. And some of their money goes into savings. And so that by the time they end the program after about 9 to 12 months, they've received some training, they've got some experience, they've got a resume, and they've got a little pot of money so they can make the first and last month's deposit on an apartment. And the success rate is phenomenal. The graduation rate is more than 75%. More than 75% of people at the end of the program exit the program with a place to live and a job. And boy, there's nothing to hate about that as far as I'm concerned. And I think the only thing we could do to improve on it is do more of it. Because as Evan said, I think Evan's stats are about right. There's about 400 to 500 homeless people in our community at any given time. If Bridge House can only train 45 of them, not all of them are maybe suitable for the program, but if we can only train 45 at a time, that's not enough, in my opinion. So, which maybe I will get you to Darren. Let's just kind of go around the room.
I'm just going to add on to that too. I don't know if anybody heard the NPR story on the way over here that they were talking on national figures about homelessness, but they also added in, specifically out of Arizona, it was one governor that was talking about it, that the working poor is now becoming homeless, and that Arizona alone increased 70% with 55 and plus seniors going homeless. So we're not unique to this situation. I think, personally, I think Boulder's doing some really great things. But we have some future issues that are even going to be more pressing, is that we have an aging population that we have to consider what does that look like, especially as expenses rise. Like, how do we consider people who are literally losing their homes with, you know, a new home housing situation for me is my new roommate is 71 years old, and you know, so how do we house the aging again in place in alternative situations for just our elderly who are living on, you know, set living expenses? So.
Yeah, that's a huge issue that we are going to have to really begin to address in earnest within our own city, is our aging population and making sure that we have affordable senior care. Interestingly, right now, as part of that 311 Mapleton proposal, they have offered a 1-to-1 ratio from the on-site housing units that they're going to be building to an off-site affordable senior living center. So that, as proposed now this may change if the 311 proposal changes, then the off-site affordable may change. But as it stands, that would be located at Fruhof's with over 100 units of affordable senior congregate care, which we don't actually have any of, I believe, in our city.
What is it?
A permanently affordable senior living congregate care. So
What does that mean?
So that's like what they have at Fraser Meadows and other places where it's a more full service. You have food services, you have medical services.
What's the price tag going to be on
So this is permanently affordable. So this is all for low-income seniors as their sort of community benefit as part of the 311 Mapleton project. Now, again, that may change if the original project changes, but something like that is actually very, very needed in our community. One of the things that you brought up that they are talking about, and whether it's these guys or whether it's others that I loved, though, is matching up, because social isolation is a big deal too, and so matching up seniors in those houses, and if they have a 2-bedroom, give the option of having a college student or another person in our community, a younger person looking for affordable housing, live with them. And they have been doing that actually a little bit at the academy, and it's worked incredibly well and really changed some lives for both young people and the residents at the academy. So that's an exciting project, and I do want to just kind of cycle back around. What was your name?
Dorothy.
Dorothy, to your comments just about some people don't want to be off the streets or whatnot. And Bob did a great job of providing some of these specific programs and nonprofits that we have working on that. But I also would just want to kind of pass along, we have a wonderful homeless coordinator through our municipal court system. And, she's just said, I can't overemphasize the words trauma. And it can seem with 1 or 2 or even 10 attempts that people don't necessarily want services, but so much of that goes back to trauma. And I think that again, our role and what some of these programs are already doing is really working with people to kind of heal those core wounds, to help release from drug addiction, to help with mental health, and that's going to be so key in our whole homeless services program.
You made some really great points, so thank you, because it made me think of two more things. One is, you mentioned families not being priced out effectively, and we about half of our homeless people that live in this community are families with children. Now, you don't see them, right? You don't see them. You may see single people, you may see somebody on the street asking for money, but oftentimes you don't see the hidden homeless, which is oftentimes mothers with children, right? And they may be couch surfing someplace, they may be sleeping in their car, and they're often invisible to us. 600 students in BVSD have no permanent address or are technically homeless. 600 students, K through 12, and that's just a crime, right? That number should be 0. One of the programs that we started about 1.5 years, or maybe it's now 2 years ago, is I think it's called Keeping Families Housed, or something that nature. But anyway, here's the program. And it's funded by the city. It's like $250,000. And we just renewed it. So what families do is, and we administer it through EFA. EFA is a nonprofit, and we provide the money to EFA, and this is what they do. The family is they're housed, but they're on the brink of being unhoused because maybe a layoff or some sort of economic setback. We don't want that family to become unhoused, right? Because now they're in a different system, and children are traumatized, as Bill said, and and then they've got to find housing, and often that's just a black mark against them as far as finding a new place. And so rather than letting that happen in the first place, this program provides a supplement of $500 a month up to 3 months for that family to kind of bridge the gap. Now, for some families, that still is not enough, and it's not an end-all be-all, but for some families, that difference is just enough to keep them housed until they can stabilize and get a new job or find some sort of other stability. Sometimes it's actually maybe moving in with a friend or a relative, but it's just that to prevent that eviction or that foreclosure from actually happening. The second, and I'm glad you mentioned aging in place, is, and this is something that you're going to see from us this year, is relaxation of our ADU rules. So ADUs are accessory dwelling units, okay, and that would be something that it would be, if you live in a house, it may be a part of your house, or it could be a separate unit on your property. Maybe it exists right now, maybe you've got a carriage house, or maybe you could build something, again, subject to our zoning rules. And Boulder, when it put its rules in place for accessory dwelling units many, many years ago, long before Jill and I were here, has some really, really tight rules, some very limited restrictions on what people can do. And there's only a few hundred, at least legal, ADUs in the city. And if we can create more ADUs so that, because we have a lot of people in our community who are seniors, who have a lot of equity in their home, the house is, quite frankly, too big for them, right? You know, maybe they raise their kids there. They don't need all of the space. Maybe they got a carriage house out back, or maybe the lot would be suitable to build a unit. And maybe they stay in the house and rent the unit, or maybe they move into the smaller unit, right? And they can rent their house out. They don't want to move. They don't want to leave. They want to leave that house or the equity in the house to their children or grandchildren, and they're not ready to move into a retirement community, or that's not right for them. Or maybe they don't have enough money to move into a retirement community. And so one of the things we're going to be looking at this year is relaxing those rules so that we can have more accessory dwelling units, which creates, one of the issues was housing, creates more housing without creating more houses, right? We can allow more people to live in the same amount of space without a lot of construction, but we can be more welcoming community, whether it's young people who are living with old people, or old people simply aging in place and finding some tenants to support that. We've kind of gone around the room, so I'll come back to you. Darren, I think you were next.
Yeah. So just in the numbers you gave, Councilmember Yates, you said there's about 500 homeless people in Boulder, and we have, if I recall the number you said, 210 beds that we offer.
310.
310.
Yeah.
So I know of 160 at the shelter, around 50 in the Path to Home program, and then they expand that another 50. So that's 260 on weather triggers. And what's the extra?
I think they expanded to 100. Yeah.
Right, 100 plus 160, so 260.
It's 100 plus 50 plus 160. But I have your email address. I can
So
send
what's
you
that, Tony?
information.
So
310.
even if you get to 310, that only counts when the weather thresholds are low enough. And so you said we have about 500 homeless people, but you've also said that we have about 600 homeless school kids in Boulder Valley. Yes, in Boulder Valley. I do know that Attention Homes, who goes out on the street in Boulder, has estimated that we have about 170 youth at a given point in Boulder. So I don't think that 500 is the number. I would say when the homeless working group that the city brought together was estimating how much housing they would need, the number they came up with was 1,300 homes. So whatever it is, we also know that the coordinated entry program, which I want to say has some real value, had in December or January, 544 homeless people had applied for assistance. 544, and if we go with Bob's number, 360 beds. 310. Thank you.
Yeah.
Keeping me honest.
Yeah.
Even that's just the people who went through a process where you have to show up at the county building or wherever it is now and go through a process, give your name, and a lot of people don't want to do that for whatever reason. A lot of people just don't want to be in shelter anyway for whatever reason, valid reasons. I just saw today they shut down the CU Boulder Business School of Leeds library because they found one bed bug. I think the shelter would be closed pretty much year-round if that was a threshold, if it was, yeah. So there are reasons people don't want to go in. And yet, it was 13 degrees when I walked in here, and you can wear a sleeping bag or a blanket during the day. I'm curious. I have some other numbers I want to ask about, and I promise not to take everyone's time. But one thing I want to ask both of you, and not taking away from that I believe you have good intentions, but why should someone be able to wear a sleeping bag today, but when the temperature drops below zero, as it could tonight, suddenly that's not okay, and we call that camping? Because I call that surviving. So the other thing I want to look at, and I've got a whole list from the municipal court tickets that target homeless that we assume might. I'm with University of Denver Law School. We're doing a report on this. I'm a chancellor's scholar there. And just on camping alone, the odds, if you assume there's 1,000 homeless people in Boulder and 100,000 that are housed, we are more than 350 times more likely to give someone a ticket for camping, I call it surviving, if they're homeless. 350 times. Now, a year or two ago, it came out in USA Today that the city of Boulder was arresting African Americans at a 5 times rate. And there was, I think, an appropriate level of response from the city, who endeavored to get an independent contractor to come look at why are we arresting African Americans at a 5 times rate. This is 350 times. 350. What that tells me is either we need to figure out what's going on, or if our council doesn't have a similar shocked response, that we just don't care what happens to homeless people. So I guess I'll leave it there. Bob, I know you're an adjunct professor at University of Denver Law. You could certainly speak to the difference between a facially or as-applied unconstitutional law. I would say this is at least an as-applied unconstitutional law. So why is it we don't? So 3 things I think I've hit on that I would love to hear from you. One is that we have way more people that need a place to sleep than we're offering. Number 2 is that why the heck should we call it camping when people are just surviving? And number 3, giving the rates of citations that we have for people 350 times, how can we not say that we are targeting the homeless population? What do you want them to do if they can't get in at night, and people cannot get in at night?
Well, thanks, Darren. I'll respond to all 3 of your questions at the end there. We honestly don't know how many homeless people there are. I don't disagree with Evan's number 400 to 500. The point in time survey, I think, sometimes indicates 600.
I'm saying in the middle of winter.
Sure, 1,000. So whether it's 400, 500, 600, 1,000, it's a number higher than the 310 beds we have. But we have people who come and go in the town. We have people who are here for a few days and move on. And so to say that there's 544 people who came through coordinated entry in a period of time doesn't mean that those are 544 people who are in Boulder on a given day, first of all. Secondly, a number of our unhoused people actually are housed, but they're technically homeless because they have no permanent address. So many of the 600 BVSD students, and that of course includes more than just Boulder, are housed. That is, they're not sleeping in a homeless shelter or on the street. They're sleeping maybe with a friend of the family or a relative that has housed them. They're technically homeless because they have no permanent address. And so while we may have, whether it's 400 or 1,000 homeless people in Boulder, we don't need 400 to 1,000 beds in Boulder, as evidenced by the fact that we have 310 beds and they're not all used.
Well, I'm going to interrupt just to say and it's very relevant, I don't mean to be disrespectful. When Boho was operating and they would do overflow with multiple churches, we would have the shelter full and multiple churches. My recollection is close to 200 people was the most they ever got. So they were, citywide, you're talking nearly 500 people at the maximum need has been necessary in the past.
Well, again, if there's someone who is turned away because they don't have a place, because we don't have a place for them to sleep, I'd like to know about that. Okay, and I know sometimes people aren't aware of the services. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people don't want to go in the services. Sometimes because of their mental situation, they're not comfortable with the service. So I understand those reasons. But it's our responsibility, I think, as a community to provide a place to sleep for anyone who needs that. And I think we're doing that right now. The other question you asked, I think it was, well, there
was
two and
three.
three were kind of related, so I'll try to maybe answer them in one answer because Jill probably wants to say something too. Is, again, this is a community value. Some communities have opted to allow camping in their communities. I talked to the community leaders, the elected officials in those communities, and most of them actually regret that. Most of them say that it's not a good thing. Their advice to me is, don't do that. Don't go down that path. I was talking to a city council person from Eugene, Oregon, which has a large tent city, opportunity village, I think is what they call it. He said, oh my God, if we had enough money, we would build a homeless shelter. We don't have enough money, so this is what we had to do. Don't do it if you don't have to do it. Cities after city have experimented with this and have regretted it. I believe it's a community value. Now, if this community rose up and said, you know, a majority of us really want people camping in our parks and camping in our open space, if that was a community value, then obviously your elected officials would be responsible for that. But our sense is that's not a community value, that a majority of the people in our community would rather have us provide beds under dry roofs rather than making people sleep in parks and open spaces. It's our job to reflect that community value, and that's what we're trying to do.
So you're telling us what one council person said. The University of Oregon did a study of those camps, did a poll of the community, and ultimately the community, who started out very opposed to those camps, became very accepting and appreciative. So you're giving one data point. I personally, as a member of Boulder, would rather we keep people from dying like Benjamin Harvey did on Christmas Day.
Well, I think that I would talk about it not only as a community value, but additionally as a public health, value as well. Evan, so personally, I've volunteered at the homeless shelter for 3 years. I volunteered with Meals on Wheels for 2 years. I care very much about this. I actually tried to start a program called Beyond Shelter. It was just my own little idea from being in the real estate world, where I see so many rentals that are vacant, especially in the winter as they kind of turn over and they're waiting for spring to come to have those better rents. And I was like, oh, what if people could donate a month at a time and they get a tax credit, and we can start to utilize bedrooms that are in our own community for homeless. And I talked to EFA and I talked to Attention Homes and really tried to get this going. I talked to an attorney to draft the legal papers, and it really I got 5 people signed up, and then 3 of them backed out. So, my point is, personally, I care a lot about this. And prior to being on council, I think I would have been more inclined to agree that that a campsite would be a good thing. I have a difficult time, just as you're alluding to, saying that someone can't lay down and go to sleep, someone without a home. However, as I've looked at data with Karen and with our Human Services Department, those campsites become incredible public health challenges for us. And then if we are allowing camping on our open space and in our parks, those become public health challenges as well. And as
there are
Bob
models
said before,
of it working.
They're not warm. I mean, we're still fundamentally, people are outside. I want to get people in from the outside. I am 100% with Bob. If people are being turned away from any of our inside beds, I want to know about it, and then we want to work with more partners across the community to create more beds. But right now, what we were presented very recently is that, again, the beds aren't full. So I have come to this place of, let's continue to house people inside. Let's continue to have really constructive services to support them, and that's really the most humane thing that we can do. So
out of respect for everyone else here, I'm just going to say that neither of you mentioned the 350 times rate of arrest, and that you're both kind of ignoring that camps have been successful in other states, and that the kind of problems you're talking about can be addressed by proactively bringing camps. But thank you all for listening, and thank you for your answers.
Yeah.
Quick clarification.
Lynn, we'll get you, you'll be the next one.
Clarification from her. I don't have a question. I just wanted to clarify. It's like this is a monologue back and forth. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have 2 things I'd like to address. One is the ADU, and I'm glad to see that the city is willing to consider letting more homeowners. We're homeowners, and we have a large house because we have a large family. We have a big yard, open open space that belongs to the university behind us, so it's, it would be a perfectly wonderful place for an ADU. And no one in the neighborhood, we even have a, what do you call it, circle drive, you know what I mean, a sort of little
Cul-de-sac.
drive on our-
Cul-de-sac.
Yeah, because our lot is large, and so we had room to put one, which has been wonderful for church groups that come over. We can park 7 or 8 cars in the driveway. They're not even in the street. And I think that ADUs should be much more permitted. The secretary to one of our doctors can't afford to live in Boulder. She is a delightful single woman, and if we had an ADU, she'd be a perfect member. Nobody would even know she's there. This is the kind of thing I think the city has been blind about, and they shouldn't say, oh, every 500 feet. If every house in our neighborhood wants to have one, they ought to be able to have it, as long as you always keep the right of the neighbors if it gets bothersome, noisy, dirty, trafficky, that kind of stuff. As long as they can go to this, make a complaint and say it's too much. But as long as people are, I bet you we could take care of 1,000 single people in all
Yeah.
these various places that would
Easily.
love, that work in Boulder and would like to live here,
Yeah.
and we won't do it because we're on the Fraser Meadows list, so so we're not going to do it, but our house would be perfect for it. And I strongly hope you'll do that. The other issue.
Before you move on, maybe Jill has a reaction.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, why, I didn't, I thought maybe you were finished, so I definitely want to respond to what you said, because I think you're right on, but actually, can we just take a moment, Evan, someone, or not Evan, Darren, expressed maybe not feeling comfortable speaking up, given that they're being videoed.
Okay.
I think that.
I'll stop now. I
Yeah,
wanted to